Hey, Jarrett, thanks for joining us. I appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks, guys. This is great.
Jarrett, you wrote the book "How Sweet It Is." Jarrett's an author, like Gary, and a journalist. He's written for several magazines, Slam Magazine, and others. Um, let's first of all, we'll kind of go into the book, and we'll get into high school basketball. Basically, as we were talking right before we went on, Kentucky is one of the last two states that has one division all in high school basketball. So the state tournament consists of everything from A, and then like in football, we're up to 6A, right?
Right.
And so they all play in one Sweet 16. So you have a small school from Eastern Kentucky that will play a big school in Louisville or something like that. And it's really exciting. But Jarrett got to follow around three teams: Covington Catholic from Northern Kentucky, Taylor County from Western Kentucky, and Clay County from Eastern Kentucky. So what's interesting about the three is not just the demographics of the schools, but also the regions. So so we're going to talk a little bit about not only the basketball played there, but the regions that are played there. And then I'm sure we'll get on to a lot of other stuff. Basically, as somebody from Lexington that lives in Indiana, actually you graduated from the University of Vermont, correct?
Correct.
What made you want to write a book like this?
So I grew up in Lexington, like you said, and I went to a small school right in downtown Lexington, a small private school called Sayre that is geographically the closest school to the Sweet 16. But we, speaking in realistic terms, we probably had the farthest chance of making it to the Sweet 16 of any school in the state. But I always just knew the one champion format. That was all I knew growing up here. And then I went to school in Vermont, where even there they have less than 1 million people in the whole state, far less, and they still have several classes. And then I went to Indiana and worked. That was my first job out of college, and they that was a big to-do when they switched to 4 classes back in 1998. They're a big high school basketball state, so that was a big deal. So kind of just in traveling around and seeing what other states, what their systems were, I just gained a better appreciation for what it is we do here and the tradition, the passion that goes into it. There are families that they have friendships that are built around the Sweet 16. They met at the Sweet 16, and they'll meet up every year at the Sweet 16, and that's the one place where they see each other every year. So I kind of wanted to do this project that put 3 schools that had nothing else in common really, except for the fact that they were all going for the same trophy. And that's sort of at the center of it all.
Good deal. Whenever you got into this book and you started writing it, what were some of the challenges at the beginning to kind of getting the ball rolling?
Right. So after I lived in Indiana, I moved to New York City and was working there as a freelancer. And I had entertained the idea of this book in the back of my mind for a while, but originally pitched it as a magazine article, which it later turned out to be. I was able to do both. I wrote a small piece for a magazine called Victory Journal, but I got some good advice from my father, actually. He said, you might want to keep the idea and turn it into something larger, especially if it catches the interest of the people that you're talking to about it. So I decided to pack my bags. My lease was up in New York at the perfect time, and I moved back to Lexington. Had to jump right in because the season was coming up, and I knew I wanted to do the 3-team format. So then it was just a question of, it had been 6 years since I lived in Kentucky, and I just had to do research, figure out who was good, because I had no idea which programs were strong or anything like that. And once I had cut a list of about 12 schools that fit my criteria as far as geographic diversity and basketball prowess, I went around and interviewed each of them and cut it to 3, and then we were kind of off and running. But the biggest challenge at first was I would say, coming from where I came from, I had written for a few magazines and newspapers and things like that, but I was not coming from a overwhelmingly exciting journalism background. I wasn't coming from one of the big papers of this country, or like the Boston Globe or anything like that. So I was still just a young kid who had a little bit of experience, but not so much that it would jump off the page at you. So I kind of had to, while picking these coaches and these programs to follow, also sell them on allowing me to come into their locker rooms at halftime, come into their locker rooms after the game, be on the bus rides, be in meetings, I go on team trips, things like that. So it was sort of the initial process was both me trying to choose schools that would be the right fit while also persuading these coaches that it would be a good idea for them to let me do this and let me be around their programs.
It's also a risky move too, because, you're following them from the beginning of the season. You pick 3 teams, and if none of them go to the Sweet 16,
yeah,
then you've kind of wasted a year of your thing. I mean, were you nervous at all that might happen, or did you just have a plan B?
Oh, I was very nervous, but I did get some good advice. Rick Tellender, who actually he wrote one of the blurbs for the book, and he's just a great guy. But I sought him out for advice early on. He wrote an excellent basketball book called Heaven is a Playground, and this was before I had even started. And he said, if you do your job correctly, then no one's really going to care. No readers are really going to care if the teams win or lose, because it's more about the players and the stories and the individuals rather than the wins and losses. And I took that to heart. But at the same time, like you said, it definitely progresses the story if one of them makes it. And I was fortunate in that one of the teams did make it. 2 of them, before the one team made it, 2 teams played in the regional final, which is the game to get to the Sweet 16. They both lost on the same night. So I was thinking, oh man, I just saw my whole year crashing in front of me. It was a pretty emotional evening for all parties. But then the next night, Taylor County went on and won the regional and was able to go to the Sweet 16. So I was able to detail the whole Rupp Arena experience in the book and go with them through all the pageantry and whatnot that goes with making it to the Sweet 16.
That's one of the exciting things, Gary, is the fact that the Sweet 16 is held in Rupp Arena. So not only do you have this tournament, they get 17, 18,000 people sometime to watch these high school basketball games. I would say easily the biggest turnout for a tournament in the country.
How many days is it?
It's 5 days, 16 teams, single elimination. So they'll have it's a 16-team bracket, so they'll have 4 first-round games on Wednesday, 4 first-round games on Thursday, and then the quarterfinals Friday, semifinals Saturday, and championship Sunday.
So they do the championship. I know they used to do the semis and the championship on the same day. Have they changed that format?
They have, yeah. That's a hotly contested area around the tournament. A lot of people think that was the, hindsight. Everyone loves the glory days, but a lot of people think that was the way to do it, because it makes the whole Saturday just, there's so much emotion around it, as opposed to winning on Saturday and then having to wait a whole nother day. And a lot of people feel that by Sunday, people who have been there all week, taking work off to go watch the whole tournament, are ready to go home. So, but it gives the kids more rest. It's probably more fair to them as basketball players, but from an excitement standpoint, I agree that I think that they should probably keep the semis and the finals on the same day.
Oh, you think so? See, as an athlete, I would not want to play the semi and final on the same day. It's just, I think the quality of the game, the final game, would be poor if they instead of letting them have a day rest, prepare, strategize, put together, a game plan, as opposed to, you win, then, okay, we got to play in 4 or 5 hours, if that. I mean, that's kind of like, it reminds me of kind of rookie, little minor league baseball tournaments. You know what I mean? It just doesn't seem, for the venue and the pageantry. I mean, Rupp Arena, I don't know. I may be insulting some of the traditionalists, but that seems really amateur to me, to do it both on one day. It's just, that's what you do with little kids and little tournaments. If it's a big tournament, you're playing for a state championship, nah, man, the game's got to be on different days. I mean, it has to be. That's just my opinion.
Right, absolutely. And there's a lot of people who agree with that. I talked to, for the book, I talked to Cliff Hagan, who was the former athletic director at the University of Kentucky. He won a state championship in high school in Kentucky, won a championship for the University of Kentucky at the college level, and then won an NBA championship for the St. Louis Hawks, and I was actually talking to him about his high school tournament when they won it. And that year, I think it was 1949, he remembers playing in the state championship game, and it was at the Louisville Armory in Louisville. And he said that was when they had it, or obviously they had it then with the semifinals in the morning and the championship in the evening. And they won their semifinal game that morning. And he remembers going back to the hotel and lying on the floor playing Hearts with his teammates, Hearts, the card game. And his legs started cramping up so badly that he couldn't even get up off the floor once the Hearts game was over. And his teammates had to lift him up and physically carry him into the arena, where he promptly scored 40 points and won them a state championship. But it makes for good stories, but it's also from a sheer physical standpoint, I can see where I get where you're coming from on that.
Yeah. But if you look at kind of the basketball athletes now, especially the elite ones, in their AAU tournaments, those guys play 3-4 times a day, and they're playing full out these major games, to get these coaches' attention. So I think it's a little bit of different athlete these days. I think their turnaround on that stuff is a lot quicker.
It's just still wear and tear. A kid that young, and I don't know, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, like I said, that's stuff we did when I was in Little League, and it just doesn't. I mean, it's a big deal to get a state championship. And as a player, what happens if you pull a muscle, or you have an issue, you cramp up, you're not going to recover quick enough. I mean, it's going to really inhibit your game playing in the evening. And not only that, but you have to play a game in the morning, early morning, which isn't best for athletes either. I know as an athlete, I never did well in morning games. Most athletes don't, and they hate them, absolutely detest them. It's better to play in the evening after you've warmed up and, your body, you've had a couple meals in you. I don't know. Just for me, I would rather just play the games differently. How do the regionals work? Though, how does that structure work to get to the Sweet 16?
Right. So there's obviously 16 regions. The state's broken up into that. And there's the number of high schools in the state is actually shrinking a good amount. I think we're down to about 250 high schools in the whole state. So there's about 20 high schools per region. And
okay.
There's 4 districts within a region. And the way that works is basically the 4 schools that are all neighbors with each other and play a lot during the season, the rivals, they have their tournament, and the winner, the champion and the runner-up of the district go into the regional. So you have 8 teams in the regional, and then it's just single elimination from there. If you got to win, there's no – where with the district, the runner-up, you can lose and still advance, but with the regional, you got to win. And they usually have that at a neutral site, like the Lexington region, which is the 11th region. They hold that at Eastern Kentucky University. The 13th region, which is where Clay County is, down in the mountains, they have that at something called the Corbin Arena, which is kind of a big rodeo events center. Whereas some of the ones out in the western part of the state, they'll just have those at high schools. So it just varies as far as the venue and where they hold those. But it does make a world of difference where they hold them, because the environments are just so different. If you play in a high school gym that's packed to the gills, that's so much more exciting than playing in somewhere like the Corbin Arena, where it's only filled halfway up and it's about 30 feet from the bleachers to the actual court. So you get a lot of different environments within the regional setting, but everyone by that point is dialed in trying to get to the ultimate atmosphere in Rupp Arena.
So basically your season's playing for seeding. You're playing for seeding to play in your regional. Okay, I like that. It sounds a little bit complicated, but
the Sweet 16 is a draw. So what they do is I think it's even done before the regionals are even played, where they draw out each district. They don't have a team, but they draw out like first district's going to play 7th district in the first game and things like that. So it's happened where the best 2 teams in the entire thing play in the first round.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because it's kind of like the Kentucky Derby draw, where it all depends on where you get seated as to how far, and that's what really allows for a team like a Taylor County or a small like my high school, Grayson County, has made it a couple times, and they've gotten lucky both years to play another small region, and they won one game and they lost another one. So, it gives a small team actually an opportunity to win a game.
Exactly.
If they get the right draw.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So one isn't playing 16 and two isn't playing 15. No. Oh, okay. That makes it crazy. That is funny. That just throws it all up in the air. I like that because that would make each year pretty wild because you never know what you're going to get.
Some great storylines, that's for sure. Oh yeah.
Oh, heck yeah.
And if you look back at the history of these tournaments, and I'm sure every state that had a one division thing where they had some crazy stories, but like one of the craziest is Carr Creek, which is one of the smallest schools. If I'm not wrong, there was less than 200 kids in that school, and they came up and won the state championship one year. So Carr Creek's one of the teams. They formed the Hickory School in Indiana. They're one of the teams that's based on, the little school that beats the big school and goes on to win the state title.
The basketball gods intervene just often enough. They drop in one of those things once every decade or so, and just to keep things interesting, because otherwise you get most times it plays out how people would expect. You get Louisville, Lexington. This year it was Bowling Green. One of the big city schools, but it happens just often enough to keep the naysayers and the people who aren't really into it, or just the people who feel like their son Tommy deserves a chance at a state championship. It happens enough to keep it where it is, which is I like that.
Mm-hmm. Now you were kind of lucky that you picked Clay County, and we'll talk a little bit about the history of Clay County real quick and give Gary a little background, give everybody listening a background. One of the most famous Kentucky basketball players of all time came from Clay County High School, this little mountain school. And I'm sure, Gary, you've heard of Richie Farmer, haven't you? Mm-hmm. Richie nationally is not known probably as much for basketball as he is for being the ag commissioner, and ended up getting arrested and for fraud and different things like that. And really tough interview to get, but Jarrett actually got to interview him for this book because his son plays for Clay County now. And whenever his son, who lived outside of Clay County after the stuff happened, I don't know did he move there because of what happened with his dad from Frankfort back to Clay County, or was it something else?
It was a combination of that, and also he's really close with his grandparents, Richard and Virginia, who have remained in Clay County the whole time. And I think it was just sort of, he was hitting there was a lot of obstacles coming his way in Frankfort, and he was just ready for a change of scenery. And he wasn't even playing basketball at Franklin County, which is where he went his freshman year. And it was just time for a change of scenery, to start playing ball again, and just change things up.
Yeah. Well, if you want to talk about history, and when Richie's son went back to Clay County, that whole town, that county just went nuts because their favorite son's son is getting ready to play for them. But the history with Richie is they won a state title in '87 with Clay County, and Richie is not wasn't a big dude, little hefty, had a full beard by the time he was 14. His son has a full beard too, at the same age, but he was a scoring machine. And in the championship game in '87, they played against Ballard, which is historically one of the probably two best schools in Louisville, and beat them in the state championship. So that's probably not the last mountain school that's won it. I think one did a few years ago. I can't remember off the top of my head, but that team goes down in history. And I was reading in one of your articles that they still play, when that team comes out on the floor, they still play the highlights of the '87 championship game when they run out onto the floor. So it just shows that how long a legacy lasts once you win a championship.
It's so wild. Even just while I was there, the season I followed him, 2015-16, was Trey's senior year, Richie's son. And Richie was incarcerated for the first part of that year. He ended up getting out in February near the end of the season. But so even before I had met Richie, just driving through Clay County, there's things to remind you of the 87 and the 87 team and that whole era everywhere. There's a giant mural on one of the gas stations in town. Richard Sr. in Virginia, they renamed the street that they live on Richie Boulevard. It's incredible. They play in the Bobby Keith Gymnasium at Clay County High School, which he was the coach of Richie at Clay County, and probably one of the most beloved figures in all the mountains. He actually recently passed away, but just a great mountain coach. And that team, there's a funny story in the book. Their center the year that I followed him was named Big Red, and even that has roots in the past because the kid had red hair, but one of the assistant coaches under Coach Keith during the Richie years was named Big Red. So it's just a program that's so incredibly and almost, I say, refreshingly rooted in the past and what they've accomplished in the past. It's pretty special. So when Trey went back there, like you said, the whole place almost spun off its axis with delight. It was pretty special. And he started for 3 years there, scored 1,500 points, and led them. They only made the Sweet 16 one of the 3 years he was there, but that was actually an interesting story as well. Sorry, I'm going on and on here, but his sophomore year, Trey, when Clay County made it to the Sweet 16, and that was when Richie was getting ready to go to jail. It was when all the sentencing and all that was happening, and he was ordered to report on, I forget the date, March something, and the judge pushed his report date to Hazleton Prison in West Virginia back by a week so that he could go watch Trey in the Sweet 16 at Rupp Arena, which was pretty crazy. But yeah,
it was. Yeah, that was a crazy story. You're talking about a judge that took. It's funny because in Eastern Kentucky he probably took no heat, but the rest of the state went nuts because they postponed him going to jail for his son's tournament. Only in Kentucky.
I was gonna say, hey, it's Kentucky basketball. Come on.
Yeah,
it's pretty special. Just the history down there, and he got out, like I said, right around the time that he was there for Trey's senior night, and he was there for the end of the season. He was kind of on a bit of a tight leash. He had to report to someone, I think, back at Hazleton, and he had to call and ask for permission to go to games when he was first allowed to report home. So it was just a crazy scenario, the whole thing. I tried to tell some of my friends from out of state about it and just the significance that goes with this father-son relationship. And they can sort of grasp it, but just the people in Kentucky know what Richie did and the weight of what he's accomplished and how that lends itself to kind of his epic downfall of sorts. But he's a nice guy. As a human being, I'm a big fan. He was gracious to me, as Richard Sr. in Virginia were. They let me into their house, fed me, just great people. So great mountain people. And I'm a big fan of that whole area.
Having been from Lexington like me, and it was kind of when I used to go to Eastern Kentucky to cover it with Channel 18 in television, it kind of hit, I'd never been, and I'm from Western Kentucky. I'm from a small town, but until I went to Eastern Kentucky and saw this difference in culture, what were some of the things you thought when you first went out there, especially going to Sayre? Sayre's a private school here in Lexington, so I'm sure that's something that you were never really around until you went out there.
First of all, the love for basketball. It was that people ask me why I didn't choose a Louisville or Lexington team for the book, and I just tell them that we love our basketball throughout the state, but the level of fandom that goes with high school basketball is just so much more avid in small towns than we see here in Lexington and Louisville. Clay County is at the top of that list. They love their Tigers. It's incredible, the fanfare down there, but also just the friendliness. It's just got a real country, even though it's not the country, it's the mountains, but just a real down-home friendliness that's just incredible. I mentioned Richard Sr. in Virginia. They're just one of the few people that I got to know in my time down there. Robert Markham was the head coach of Clay County, and all of them are just more than more than happy to have me into their home, give me rides places when I was in town. Very open in all the interviews that I did. You know, all three schools were very different, but some of the other people in other places I talked to were a little bit more guarded and stuff like that. And just the mountains has this all inclusive, come on in, wrap your arm around your shoulders sort of vibe.
Well, I think what I'm getting at is from the socioeconomic changes from 87 in Clay County and Manchester, you know, the coal mining boom was still going on. So you had all this influx of money coming in. And now I'm kind of interested to see what differences did you see? I know you probably didn't see it back then, but the
Right.
differences, what kind of socioeconomic thing did you see in that region?
Yeah, so a lot of businesses have closed up. Just driving through downtown, the theater in downtown is closed. A lot of the storefronts it's a very small downtown area, but a lot of those have closed up. There's a lot of homes in disrepair. I don't know if there was people living in them or not, but I assumed that there was not. I think that just with coal mining moving on and moving elsewhere, a lot of those jobs went with it. So as you're pulling into town down there in Manchester, one of the first things you see is a gas station on the right. I forget what it's called. It's some sort of quick stop or something. But there's just tons of cars parked in the parking lot of that gas station at all hours of the day. It's got a huge parking lot, and there's always 30 to 40 cars parked, there's a lot of cars parked in there, but there's never that many people in the actual gas station. And I've stopped there to get gas and get snacks at different times. And one day I went in there and asked the attendant, I said, what are all these cars doing here? Where are all these people? And she basically said, all of them come and park here and then either share rides or they get picked up by their employers to go to either other counties or sometimes even other states for jobs, because the ones that were so readily available to them down there before, they're not there anymore, so they have to go elsewhere. But economically, you know, it's a pretty challenged place. There's not too many places to go out and eat. Although I will say the best cheeseburger I've ever had is in downtown Manchester at a place called Pat's Snack Bar. But it's, you know, the things that we kind of almost take for granted here in Lexington, as far as great places to eat and things like that, it's you don't see that as much down there. But they more than make up for it with their, like I said, their friendly attitude and whatnot. But it was kind of a shock at first going there, but then as I spent more and more time there, it sort of became a place I was sort of accustomed to, and not only that, but comfortable in. So,
what's the population?
For the county, it's about 20,000, but for the town of Manchester, like Manchester proper, I think it's about 1,300. So there's a lot of people living up in the mountains and in hollers and things like that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember I had to go to Clay County one time. There was a shooting there, and of course, anytime that you got a call at Channel 18 and said go to this county in Eastern Kentucky because of a shooting, you know it's drug related.
Right.
So me and my reporter, we were going there, and she was from California, and she was used to, you know, that area. And I'm like, you know, I'm kind of nervous about going here doing the story because these people aren't going to be too friendly that we're pulling up asking questions. She's like, no, we'll be fine. We'll just go up there, you know, we'll talk to them and everything will be cool. And I'm like, Angelica, you know, this is rough. I'm telling you, you're going to be a little shocked to see probably what we're going to go through. But she's like, no, let's go do it. So it was getting dusk and we're rolling up through the mountains. And I mean, we're going up all these curvy roads, and all of a sudden we pull up on top of this hill and there's a gravel driveway that goes down, and you can see it a mile. It goes down a mile, and there's all these people down outside of the house. And there's actually a state trooper down there. And I'm like, you know, I'm a little bit nervous about going down this driveway. And she's like, why? She goes, you know, you just need to go down there and do that. So, and I'm like, all right, we're going to go, but I'm telling you, you be ready for anything. So we start driving down the driveway. Remember, there's a cop down there. So we start driving down the driveway. Two dudes jump in their pickup truck and start driving as fast as they can to us because they see it's a TV news truck. And they both get out of their jump out of their trucks in front of us with shotguns to start coming to the to the window and telling us to get the fuck out of there. And we were both like, okay, I didn't want to be here anyway, and I jetted, So Angelica was like, all right, when it comes to East, do what?
They like tapped on the window with the shotgun. Like
pretty much. So we got out of there as fast as we could. And I told her, I was like, look, when I tell you that be a little nervous about when we go into these places, you need to realize that these people, they're going to talk to you on your own terms. So we need to get in touch with them before we go down there. So eventually we got a family member to talk to us, but they had to meet us at like the Hardee's or something like that, on the parking lot before they would talk to us. But I was like,
there's been a pretty crazy explosion of prescription drug use and just like the whole prescription drug industry is sort of taken over down there. I think I was reading some article recently, and forgive me whoever wrote that article, but I'm not going to be able to cite it off the top of my head, but they were saying that some staggering number of new pharmacies pops up every week down there, and a lot of them are not morally sound in their motives. So that's a pretty sad thing to see happening anywhere, especially down there where there's good people and whatnot. But it's pretty crazy. I think that they said there was some really staggering statistic about prescription drug overdoses down there in that area, in the Clay County area. So there's a lot that goes on down there that we don't necessarily see or want to see here sometimes here in Lexington. But
well, it's only more obvious there because it's in a microcosm. It's all over the country right now. I mean, the prescription drug epidemic, especially in opiates, it's off the charts. I mean, it's just in small towns, it's more obvious because it's right in your face.
Right.
In big cities, it's all hidden. You got so many people, but it's just as bad, if not worse.
Did you actually have to bust those places at all when you were in, or did you were just more focused on the other side?
Yeah, we did investigations on pharmacies, and it's an interesting world. That's the best way to put it. It's just the lack of morality in the pharmaceutical drug industry is pretty alarming at times. And the fact they end up in those small towns and it's the pharmacy, but obviously the drug companies, the pharmacy wouldn't be there without the drug companies. It's just sad. It just is. There's so much in our healthcare system today. There's so much fraud and so much money wasted. And people always ask me, well, what would you do to fix it? And I go, I don't know anymore. It's such a mess. And there's so many tentacles and there's so much money involved. I don't know. It's just sad. And it hits the small towns the hardest.
Right. Because
they don't have an ability, they don't have any of the other services to where they can get help. They don't understand it, and it's one of those just preying upon the naive. And I'm not saying people in a small town aren't bright or just because I grew up in a very, very small town. So did Dwayne. And it's just a different type of living. You're good old folk, you don't expect people to screw you over or someone to come in and do something like that. So you're a little more, I guess, open to that kind of fraud and deception than maybe some people would be in a larger city who have been exposed to things like this. And there's more law enforcement, it just, in a small town, it's just a small town.
Definitely.
And like Eastern Kentucky is the perfect prey too, because these people, they are hurting from working in the mines. I mean, they definitely need the medication. So, you have a perfect serum there where you got a group of people that needs the medication. You put in a pill mill down there, and then it's instant money for those people, and they can spin it around and then move out before they ever get caught. And the next group of people come in and do the same thing. So,
it's that's the thing crazy about small towns. It's inherently, it's more usually manual labor. Mm-hmm. Jobs in small towns and surrounding areas than it is in, say, a city where you can go sit behind a desk in a cubicle. Not to say you're not going to be in pain from that either, but you're right. If you're a coal miner, you're going to be in pain. I mean, you're going to get injured. Yeah, I mean, you're going to get killed. I mean, it's a very dangerous job, and that's the thing about small towns is the jobs tend to be more physically demanding and dangerous as well. So, goes hand in hand. And hey, instead of helping you, let's give you good old Oxycontin. Let's get you hooked, because they know it only takes one prescription and you're pretty much done. And then you can't get off them. And it's just, like I said, it's just sad. I don't blame the people. I mean, they don't know. I mean, how many people in a small town know that taking oxycodone or hydrocodone is going to get them addicted and spiral their life completely out of control?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And usually these people don't have jobs to begin with, and now they're in a position where they're not ever going to find one while they're in this condition. So, it's a dangerous and dirty trick,
Right.
Definitely.
Well, and how's that affected the size of the high schools? Does that affect? Because I know it did in my hometown. My hometown's smaller than when I went.
Mm-hmm.
But does that affect kind of the power structure now, that these traditional schools that were, even though they were in small towns, but they were a winner pretty much every year, now that these towns are starting to dwindle, the jobs are going away, are these traditional powerhouses, are they starting to go away too in the small towns, and or even schools closing and going away?
It's interesting because while the towns of the three teams that I followed were all different in size and culture and all that, the three schools actually ended up being almost exactly the same size, about 800 kids. And I think, if I recall correctly, that's about the same size Clay County's been for a long time. I think that there's the population of the county hasn't really gone down too much. It's and the size has remained the same. I think people move down there just for different reasons. Like, I know that obviously Trey moved down there for family reasons and also to play basketball. It's interesting because like you said, all signs point to the school size also going down. But as far as I know, it's stayed about the same and possibly even grown. Don't quote me on that because I don't know that for sure. But it's still at about 800 strong, which is a pretty decent sized high school. And Taylor County, actually, out in Campbellsville, out in the western Kentucky, it's one of the few towns in Kentucky still that has two public high schools. That's it. Obviously in cities like Lexington, we have many. In Clay County, they have one. In Taylor County, they have Campbellsville High School and Taylor County High School. And that was kind of another big storyline going all year with that, was whether or not they were going to consolidate. They were building a new high school facility in Taylor County. And there was a lot of talk about whether they would just close down Campbellsville High and have all those kids come over. A two high school town leads to great sports rivalries, but also some animosity and just a lot of gossiping and things like that.
Yeah.
I was talking to a barber in Campbellsville, and his shop is a popular hangout for athletes on both high school teams. And I asked him what the rivalry meant to the town, and he said, for the kids, they're just playing the game, but for the parents, it's crazy. They always think, because the kids can go to one high school or another, and they always think there's some ulterior motive to everything that happens. And as a result, I think that's why I mentioned the number of high schools across the state is shrinking to about 200. I think we're down to 250 or so. And I think that has a big role to play in that. Everyone's just kind of says, let's just cut all the nonsense and just bring them all together. It will only enhance the sports teams anyway. We can pool the resources, etc. But it also just cuts down on small town drama. And I think it helps the state as a whole to just be able to give more money to more individual schools. So
it does make sense fiscally, and it does, to have two high schools. I mean, funny story where I grew up to say that our rivalry was called Big Pine. Mm-hmm. Our town was called Lone Pine. I cannot make this shit up. All right. And we're both, I mean, Big Pine was smaller than us, but they're outside their town. They had a big pine tree, right? Big Pine.
Yeah.
So one year, a group of kids went up and burnt their tree down in their town. And I remember all that going down. You're right. And the rivalries. And they were, I want to say they're 40 miles away from my town, but not that far.
Right.
And yeah, and you're right. And there's been another town close to us, and we've talked over the years several times about combining with that school. And it gets into this weird kind of, well, this is how it's always been. Right. You're going to eliminate the rivalry, and I can see that where people are all, no, do not combine the high schools. But financially and fiscally for the district, and even to be more, like you said, more competitive, yeah, absolutely makes sense. Exactly. But tradition, hey, you're in Kentucky, man. I was in a little podunk California county, but that's different.
Where in California is that? Lone Pine and Big Pine.
That is the best way to describe it is basically about 3.5, 4 hours north. Remember my map, northeast of LA.
Huh. Okay.
So yeah, our county is the least populated county in all of California, where I grew up. So it's very rural. And that's why Dwayne was kind of shocked. Everyone goes, "Oh, you're from California," and I go, "Nah, man. I grew up a dumb redneck just like you, man. It's no different. We all did the same thing. We had the rodeo. That was the big thing. So we actually had a guy from our town who's a famous pro rodeo guy. So yeah, it's I know it. Don't get me wrong. I understand what you're talking about. But also being from California, I understand why Kentucky and Maine are probably the two last states that can do it, or that do it, because there's not a big population. I mean, California got 34 million people.
Right.
How in the world would you ever do a high school Sweet 16? It is not going to happen, which is sad because I didn't even know. Dwayne, did you ever tell me this? Or was I just not paying attention? You probably did at some point. But to have a Sweet 16 state tournament to decide with 16 counties, oh, that's awesome. I mean, I look at that and I go, as a sports fan, that is good as it gets right there.
Oh, if you ever got a chance, it's the unfortunate thing is about it is it also usually coincides with the SEC tournament.
No.
So you have your hardcore Kentucky fans and the ACC tournament. So you got your hardcore Louisville fans, your hardcore Kentucky fans that kind of lose focus on the state championship some years because it's during the SEC tournament. I wish there was a way, and sometimes it doesn't fall that way. It'll be the week before. But, whenever Kentucky and Louisville is involved, you lose so many fans that would be just casual observers of the tournament, and it would really even make it bigger.
Well, why don't they just plan around it every year? Why don't they just plan to make sure the high school tournament's a week before the SEC tournament? Well, forget it. Forget. I answered my own question. That would mean you would have to eliminate all the politicians, bureaucrats, bureaucracies, and idiots involved. Never mind.
Exactly.
Never mind. I made way too much sense right there.
Yeah, because when I was at Channel 18, I never got to go to the Sweet 16 tournament because and I wanted to, but I always had to cover Kentucky. So I was either. And they'll do what they do is they do the women's tournament one week, and the next week they do the men's, and they flop it, or the boys, and then they flop it.
Oh, they reverse it.
They still do that, right? They still switch the weeks anyway. And so I never got to do it. I would go to do the women's tournament almost every year, and then I would end up going to the boys tournament. Never. So I never got to sit down and watch that until the only 2 times I went to the tournament is when my high school actually played in it. And like I said, they played in it twice. And I was at 18 one year. And I said, somebody else is going to have to go do this because I'm not going to miss my high school team playing in the Sweet 16. And I didn't even cover it. I just took a vacation. So, I wanted to enjoy it without actually working. I still got a press pass. Still got to go in the locker room. So that was cool. But
Grayson County.
Why don't they combine those though? Why don't they do the girls and boys at the same week? I mean, you got the arena. I mean, I would just put it all in there and alternate days. Girls one day, guys the next day. You could have both men's and women's championship game on the same day. How cool would that be?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I look at solving things that make sense to me. I mean, that would be fun.
Well, economically, they want to do the girls tournament somewhere else, just to bring in and I think is it still in Bowling Green right now?
Next year actually is going to be the first year that they're both going to be in Rupp.
Okay.
I think that I think like you said, they're going to have them both really close to each other, but I don't think they're going to alternate girls and boys. I think they're just going to do the girls all the way through and then the boys all the way through. But yeah, that was pretty big news because it has been in at Northern Kentucky University the past few years. And now they're moving that to Lexington as well. I think they're going to keep it before the boys, but
yeah. And as far as like basketball in the state too, that we haven't produced, it's kind of lost a little bit of luster because we haven't produced really a major D1 athlete with a name in a long time. Used to, you would have a Richie come through, or you would have a Rex Chapman or Allen Houston or somebody like that. These guys that have played either elite college basketball or in the pros. And who's the guy for the Lakers that's from Louisville? Did he play in the state tournament? He went to Ohio State.
Oh no, he went to he played at Louisville Eastern his first 2 years, and then he went to prep school in Florida for
Okay.
his real big years.
Yeah, so he would have been probably the last one if he'd played in it. And did Rondo ever make the tournament?
That is a good question. I think he also went to Louisville Eastern.
He did.
Or maybe not Eastern, but he I don't know. I can't remember if he made the tournament.
So the star power is not there anymore. That's the thing. It's kind of hurt the state because really Kentucky high school is starting to turn into a football state. And it started back when Hal Mumme was the coach here. He started working with the high school coaches and created better camps and started kind of training college coaches to his system. And if you look at high school football in this state, they still run almost all of them. It seems like runs the Hal Mumme, air raid type deal, so he kind of started this whole thing. And as the years gone by, coaches have focused on these high school coaches and helped coach them up. And Kentucky football we have a lot more D1 college football athletes coming out of this state than basketball. That's for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, but it's cyclical too, though. That's anywhere, it can't be. It always goes up and down, sport to sport. I'm sure basketball 10 years from now will come back. Who knows?
Well, you think it will because just the whole parents are pulling their kids out of football because of concussions and things like that. That's why
because it's very violent. All right.
Yeah.
Gosh forbid 2 kids hit each other.
I know, but it's true. I mean, I tell you, the sport that's booming in this state right now is lacrosse.
Really?
Yeah, it's turning. I've got a friend of ours whose son was just named a lacrosse All-American, and to get that out of Lexington, Kentucky is pretty crazy. So, but lacrosse in this state though is getting huge.
It's close to getting KHSAA sponsorship, or I think Josh Moore, the Herald Leader, said he thinks it'll be a matter of 1 or 2 years before it's a KHSAA sport, which would be a big deal. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, because it's only a club sport right now.
Oh, it is? Yeah. But it's still big. See, all I remember about lacrosse at San Diego State was they allowed us to bring beer into the stadium, so we used to bring a keg and just get hammered. Yeah. And if one of our friends played on the team, we didn't even know how the game worked. So that's my experience with lacrosse.
Yeah, that's what's great about club teams or things like that is like UK, the most fun sport to go to is not basketball. The most fun sport to go to at UK is the college hockey team. They play at midnight on Friday nights at this little bitty skating rink here in town, and it is insanity. A drunken insanity. People just leave the bars, head to that place, and it is, oh my gosh. I mean,
that sounds like awesome. Fun though.
They also put together what might be one of the great promotional posters in history with that Ashley Judd hockey team poster. That I don't have one of those, but I would sure love to get one of those someday. That was just it's got kind of taken on a life of its own. I don't know if it's still as popular, but you're exactly right. The hockey team has sort of got this like cult or mystical aura because a lot of people, and I say mystical because a lot of people don't necessarily even remember being there at the game.
Yeah.
People love it, and I think it's great. I love club sports. That's how football was at Vermont. So we used to love going to the football games. They played at a high school, and it's just great.
How does that work? What do you mean a club sport?
It's a university sanctioned but non-NCAA. Is that correct?
Right. So yeah, exactly. You can put like the school's name on your jersey and be affiliated, but it's sort of run by the people who are on the team. There's usually like a president, or the coach sort of moonlights as like also the behind the scenes logistics guy. And as a result, they don't play like a full schedule like you would see on an NCAA team, but a lot of them play out of state games and there's usually a club national tournament of different forms and fashions for whatever sport. So
yeah. And I'm sure they sell beer at the games to raise money. I'm sure fundraising is a big part of it. I never played. I had friends that played on the lacrosse team when I was in school, but I don't know how they ever got their money to do it, because they would travel. They would hit most of the SEC teams, because most of those teams all had club sports. And so they would head down to Florida and Alabama and stuff like that. And and the best parties on campus were always a club sport party. If you ever got invited to that, you knew it was just going to be craziness, and it always was.
Exactly.
You're right. But see, lacrosse wasn't a club sport for us. I think it was a sanctioned.
Oh, really?
I think
probably the Pac-10. I would say definitely.
No,
it's not Pac-10. But I'm saying California in that area.
I can't remember. Again, just like your hockey games, I can't remember. I know I went to the games, but I don't remember much of any of them. But I do remember the parties afterwards, and they were fun. They were a good time. Maybe it was a club sport. Huh.
How did football work as a club sport? I mean, you said it was played in high school, but that seems like something that would be a money generator for a school to not have that.
Well, Vermont is Vermont, and in so many ways, I think there's only one Walmart in the whole state, and they have it hidden behind a whole row of trees so that no one can really see where it is. And I think that probably
I kind of like that.
Yeah, the football thing sort of goes. I think they did have football once upon a time. Because a lot of people wore those shirts that are all too common now that say undefeated since such and such a year. So I think they did have it at one point, but I think there's a lack of, probably if I had to diagnose it, there's a lack of interest from the student body to fill a whole arena there's only 10,000 undergrads at UVM, and it's in a town that's only got about 20,000 year-round residents. And like I said before, the state only has about 300,000 people or something. So they wouldn't put people in the stands in the same way that a SEC school would or anything like that. But there are still some people who love it, and they're the ones who play on the club team, but they play at Burlington High School. All the high school teams have football teams, and they would just play at the local high school. And their schedule, it had everything on it from semi-pro teams that had, older guys on it to junior varsity NCAA or NAIA teams. It just kind of ranged whoever they could get their hands on to play them. That would be a match of some sorts that could give some sort of competition. But all my friends who played loved it. They got some sweet gear, Vermont football jerseys. They had the only ones of those that exist in the entire country. And they had some pretty cool football helmets that'll be cool to carry with them wherever they go in life.
So Vermont's the Catamounts, right?
That's right. Yep.
What's a catamount?
Gosh, you're asking the wrong person. I spent 4 years there, and I think I had that question my first week there, and I've quickly realized that no one up there seems to know. It's just one of those big cats that roams around in the forest. I don't really know, but it was pretty perfect because they did have D1 sports. They had D1 lacrosse. D1 basketball. So if you were into that, you could go and see some level of competition. Actually, Vermont is coming to play in Lexington next year. The first game of the year will be here. So they always schedule some big name opponents, and it was pretty fun. But at the same time, it wasn't it was sort of like it had the feel of maybe more of what a high school team would have to people. It wasn't live or die like we have here in Kentucky, live or die by the team, or what you see in Indiana where my mom's from. So it was kind of more of a relaxed feel. My roommate was on the team, and he's just a regular guy, as opposed to playing at a big school. You walk around and you get mobbed for autographs everywhere. So it was interesting to see that Division I basketball coming from Lexington and going there, seeing Division I basketball on that scale, a much scaled down version. That was interesting for me.
Yeah, that's a big difference. Did you grow up a Kentucky fan?
Oh yeah, so my mom went to IU. She's from Indiana, and she tried for the life of her to get me to have some Hoosier blood in me. But when you grow up here, you just can't avoid it, And I'm sure that you could feel that even out in Grayson County. It's inescapable. They just the blue mist, or whatever the hell John Calipari calls it, just swoops you in and grabs you. And it was game over from my first Rupp Arena experience on. I'm actually going to talk to some guy at a radio station in Vermont later this week, and basically because they all have questions up there of what the heck to expect when they come down here to Rupp Arena. So I'm just going to try for the life of me to explain what they're getting.
What an ass whooping is. It's just going to be a massive ass kicking. That's all it's going to be.
And what it feels like to have 25,000 people on top of you just yelling down. It's pretty crazy. Rupp Arena is
you haven't got to go to a game at Rupp yet. I have to. One of these days when you come in, we'll get you to come in and go to a UK game. Gary's a UCLA fan, so he's familiar with the big program.
Well, I grew up a UCLA fan, but I went to San Diego State, so technically San Diego State's my first school. UCLA is I have to split the two, but I'm a San Diego State football guy, but UCLA is right there because we had one channel, KTLA, that was the only place we could get sports pretty much, and that was UCLA USC. That's all we grew up with. Besides ABC, NBC, and CBS, those were our other three channels, but those were the only California teams we would watch on TV. Mm-hmm. So of course, I wasn't going to like USC. Right. So, but no, I've been in Pauley Pavilion. San Diego State's new arena is fantastic. It is one of all the arenas I've been in the country. I would put it up in the top 10. It's pretty crazy there.
How many undergrads are at San Diego State?
Oh God, when I went, I want to say it was 38,000 when I went 30 years ago now.
Yeah.
And
the thing about that is when you went to San Diego State and it was that big, University of Kentucky was only about 24,000.
Yeah.
Because Rupp Arena actually held more people than students at UK. And they've just expanded to get over 35,000 in the last probably 5 or 6 years.
Well, that's crazy for college basketball because I think ours holds close to 15,000, and that's still considered a big arena in basketball. But I couldn't imagine 25, 30,000 in a college basketball arena. When you got Cameron that holds 6, 7,000.
Yeah. Well, I think it's 8 or 9. But the best arena in the world is Allen Fieldhouse, hands down.
Have you been there?
Yeah. I mean, I went to when we played when Wukosh was still on the team. This was back when Tubby was the coach. We went down there and it was kind of a funny story because as a photographer, me and Ryan Lemon went down there and to shoot the game just because we wanted to go to Allen Fieldhouse. So we roll in and I've got my camera and I've sat on the floor at Rupp Arena, sat on the floor at the Dean Dome, sat on the floor at Indiana, everywhere. So I didn't think anything of it. Well, I go ask, all right, where's my place where I'm going to sit down and shoot? And they go, oh no, we don't allow video cameras on the floor, or up in anything. So, you have to take the feed.
Huh.
I was like, dude, I drove all the way from Lexington to shoot this game. I said, they're paying me to come here and do this. We need to do something about that. And he's like, nope, not going to happen. So I kind of started making a fuss of it. Ryan started making a fuss of it. And finally, Bill Self caught wind of what was going on. He said, if he gets to shoot the games on the floor at Rupp Arena, he gets to shoot the games here in Kansas. So you find him a spot. So, people, whatever people say about Bill Self, I'll never say anything bad about that guy, because he drove all this way. He's going to get what he wants. And man, you talking about the Kansas City reporters and photographers, they were so pissed because they years went to this game and had to sit in the back and just record it on their machines, and here I am, I get to go sit down there.
That's an incredible story.
Yeah. So I walk into we get there early, because I said, Ryan, I want to get there super early just to look at the arena, because you always hear about Allen Fieldhouse. And we walk in.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it looks like a giant high school gym is the best way I can make it out. Everything like metal roof, just bleachers all the way up. And
doesn't it have windows in it?
Yeah, it does. It does. I think I can't remember if it's on one side or both side, but it's open windows on one of the end zones or both. And I walked all the way up to the top. Nobody was in there. Walked all the way up to the top and just looked around, took some pictures, and then walked down. And as I was walking down, Dick Vitale came out, and he was just walking through. And we kind of walked by each other, and he goes, I saw you up there. Pretty awesome, ain't it? And I was like, yeah, this is incredible. So I'm sitting in there, and we sit there and talk for probably 5 minutes. So I'm in Allen Fieldhouse by myself with Dick Vitale talking about basketball. And I was like, man, it does not get any better than this.
Yeah.
So anyway, the gym's packed, and it is unbelievably loud. They do something a little bit different with their season tickets. Like UK, the season tickets are always the same people. Well, Kansas, every year, it's based on donation. So if you make a bigger donation than somebody the year before, you move down, So they changed their whole season ticket. So the people are more amped to be loud. Whereas at UK, they sit on their hands a lot of the time because they have the same seats for 20 years and they're kind of bored with it.
Right. So
there's a great environment. Well, of course, we're getting beat and near the end, and then behind me, the students were behind me, and I was been waiting for this the whole game. But when they know they're going to beat you, they start doing the rock chalk jayhawk. And man, they started doing that, and the back of my hair stood up. And I swear every hair on my body was standing up when they were doing the rock chalk jayhawk. And it was so awesome. It was so awesome. And then before the game, of course, they're playing the video, and it's like video of Wilt Chamberlain, Duncan, and stuff like that. So their history is just as good as Kentucky.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, Kentucky and UCLA and all this stuff. So you can just feel it.
I can't believe that Bill Self interjected on the behalf of two Kentucky photographers. That's awesome.
He's just the way he is, man. And like after the game, we all go back there, and he does his press conference, and he's just hangs out, Whereas Kentucky guy, they get up on the podium and they get whisked out, that's it. But he would stand back there and like he had nothing better to do than to talk to you. And I thanked him for letting us do that. And then we had to jet fast. We had to get to Kansas City and cut the video and do our live shot or whatever. But man, they're best experience, one of the best sporting experiences of my life.
Well, you realize who broke their longest home winning streak, or one of their longest, right? There, San Diego State.
San Diego State.
Yeah, we beat them there.
Was Steve Fisher the coach there when you were there?
He was. No, he was not. We stunk. I forgot how old I am. We were terrible. We had the longest Division I losing streak in the country. And we played at the old LA Clippers arena when the Clippers were in San Diego. Really? And the Clippers were gone. They were in LA at this point. And we played there, and it was the sports arena. It was like walking into a 60s. It was just weird. And we could literally walk up and sit in the front row, and there's no one there. We sucked. We were terrible. And Fisher came on. Fisher was, God, he just retired. They were there. He was there, 20 years? Maybe 18, 19 years. I've met him several times. He's a really nice guy. Yeah. But yeah, it's San Diego State basketball was not on the map. For the only thing we had known was that Tony Gwynn was our point guard and held a lot of the records. That was about
that's amazing. As good as he was at baseball, he was a great point guard at San Diego State.
Yeah, he still holds records to this day. He still holds a lot of records. Well, we had Michael Cage. That was it. Remember Michael Cage?
Yeah.
That's it. But yeah, now, Kawhi Leonard, and, Kawhi's probably, one of the best players ever, to come out right now in the NBA when you think about it. And yeah, it just changed. And I got to get a taste because me and Dwayne always talked about basketball because we're both big basketball fans. And, he's going, Kentucky, I'm off, dude. I got nothing. I didn't go to UCLA. I went to UCLA games and it was fun to watch, but I didn't go there. And once we got good to kind of see, and we talked about that, to see once you're good, that, wow, the whole atmosphere changes, the whole the venue for you as a fan changes. It's pretty amazing to get a taste of that. And, if anyone, one of my dreams is to go even, I used to be kind of a Duke fan. I wouldn't say fan. I used to like their style of play, but I don't think much of them anymore. But I got to get to Cameron before I die. It's one of those I got to. And one of my dreams too is to go from the East Coast to the West Coast and hit every major college football stadium in the country. So go to Penn State, go to the Horseshoe, and go to LSU. And hit all these big schools and then end at the UCLA USC game on the West Coast. It's a dream. I don't know if I'll ever do it, but it'd be pretty cool to do that for basketball too.
Yeah. Let's just take a year. We'll do it. We'll do a year, and every weekend we'll just go to someplace else when we get rich.
Well,
I don't care if I'm not rich. I'll figure it out. I'll just sleep in my car. But, I've never been to Rupp. I've been to Pauley. I've been to a couple all over the country. One that shocked me was when I lived in New Mexico, going to
University of State,
going to the pit.
Yeah,
I was not prepared for that.
That's an awesome environment.
Yeah, I had no idea. I lived there 7 years, and I went to a lot of their games because obviously they were always in our conference back when we were in the WAC, and then we went to the Mountain West. So I've lived in New Mexico actually twice in my life. And I'll tell you what, it is rowdy in there. I mean, that is a place that I will put up with any major program in the country as far as arenas. That place goes off.
It's actually in the ground, right?
It is. Like it's sunken. It's sunken in. It's below ground, below grade. So you go in the stadium, when you go into the arena, it looks like it's kind of squatty. Yeah. It's not very big, but you go down, and it's a trip. And it was a really cool experience to watch games there. They've had some good teams too, but nothing, it's been a while. But yeah, I got to get to Rupp. I got to do that. Allen Fieldhouse would be a good one. One I got to get to is Gonzaga. I'm right here.
Yeah.
But
from what I understand, that's a crazy experience too. Yeah.
Well, you're not getting in. I've asked. You're not getting a ticket to any of those games because it's small. It's like Cameron. Mm-hmm. It's a small arena. It holds very few people. So, and Gonzaga's just, it's just not too far from me. I'm just above Spokane. But it's pretty crazy, man. I was hoping they would win. I hate North Carolina.
I think everybody except for North Carolina fans were wanting them to lose that game. All right, Jarrett. Let's it's been well over an hour, so let's go on and cut this thing off. Jarrett, tell everybody how they can find your book.
Absolutely. It's on Amazon. Just type in How Sweet It Is and my name. And it's also my publisher's website, which is sportshistoryfoundation.org. If you're in Lexington listening, then it's basically wherever books are sold in Lexington, all the local stores. As well, we try to stock as many stores across the state as possible. But if you're somewhere else, then Amazon or the publisher's website, and I'll get a couple copies over to you guys too, in case some of your all's friends or whatever want to reach out to you, and we'll we'll get you all stocked up too, and as well as get you your individual copies. So.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. And for you guys that are listening, we've been talking about it here and there, how we are finalists to host Kentucky Sports Radio in the next couple of weeks. I think January or June 27th when Matt's on vacation. So we're going to come out in the next few days. It's going to come out on KentuckySportsRadio.com, and they're going to have a fan vote. So we're going to put it out there. So if we put it out there, do us a favor. We're going to ask you to post it on your Facebook page, post it on your Twitter feed to try to get as many people as we can to vote for us, because this would be a big deal for us to get this huge audience that KSR has. So just be listening for that. And, I'm hoping we get it. That would be huge for me and being here from Kentucky and knowing what KSR is. And Gary doesn't quite know what that's like, but, just getting us out there would be an awesome, awesome deal.
And I'm happy to vouch for you guys. That you guys made me feel right at home. That was a very fun interview. And I think that KSR would be lucky to have you.
Yeah, we try not to take things too seriously like they do. So hopefully we'll get it. So just a couple of old dudes, old veterans, so check us out and get us on there. All right, guys. You guys have a good afternoon, and we'll see you all next week.